Hi, I'm DFL Chairman Ken Martin, and this is the Chair's Corner. Joining me today is State Representative Rena Moran. First elected in 2010, Rena represents a portion of St. Paul. Rena has a degree in early childhood education and is a member of the House Early Childhood and Youth Development Policy Committee. Thank you so much for joining me, Rena.
Thank you. Thank you for the invitation. I am really excited to be here today.
How's your summer going so far?
My summer's going really good. I am relaxing a little bit, gardening, a lot of gardening.
Good.
Yeah, but it's been really good for me, time to sit still, reflect, and do another type of hard work.
Yes, absolutely. In the past 2 years now, DFLers have made just historic investments in early childhood education, which is, of course, near and dear to your heart. And this comes after years of just continued disinvestment by Republicans in our education system, but also years after economists have told us that some of the best ways we can reduce the achievement gap and invest in our early learners is by making investments in early childhood education. Can you talk about what happened the last 2 years on early childhood education and education generally, and what that means for Minnesota families?
Well, gosh, the last 2 years has been like historical investment in education, from early learning, scholarships, to all-day K, to freezing tuition, to investment in Pell Grants. I mean, it's just been really, really great. It has been a great 2 years. And so what that means for everyday people, what that means for our kids of color, closing the achievement gap, which is a huge opportunity gap, it really is creating an opportunity for our youngest learner to enter kindergarten ready and prepared, reading by 3rd grade, so that they can have a successful life in school, but also in life.
Right.
And that is really, really important, that we see that that we can go back to pre-K, right, and say, this is, for every dollar we invest, we get a $7 return for that. I mean, if I don't know any business person who would say, if I had to invest in something, let that be the part that we invest in.
Well, it's such a great return for the investment. But, one of the things some Minnesotans might not realize is we have one of the best education systems in terms of graduation rates and ACT scores, and the success of white students is really high, but we have one of the highest achievement gaps in the country for students of color, and it's really a shame, and we have to do more to address that. And you've been a real leader on that. What do you think some of the things we need to look forward to in the future are to closing the achievement gap?
So one of the things that I am really excited about, and I think for me and for the state, I think it was a different way of looking at how do we close that achievement gap. And I can talk about the Promised Neighborhood. We invested funding into the Promised Neighborhood. I think we are the first in the country to do that. And what that means is that, having investment in scholarships and early learning is really important and key. I always want to share a little story, right? Because born up on the south side of Chicago, been a part of a community, African-American community. In many parts of that community, you had the teachers and the business owners, you had the doctors and the physicians who were part of the community, but you also had so many of the people who was in poverty, who was on assistance, who was all part of that community. And I remember at the age of 13 looking around my community, and I could just see myself as that 13-year-old sitting in front of the building that we rented, my parents rented, and just reflecting on what do I want to be when I grow up. And the one thing that I knew that I wanted to do, just looking around, what was going on in my community, is that I wanted to be a teacher. Right? I wanted to just look at how I can create better outcomes for my kids, because I believe education is a way out of poverty. And if we are able to achieve in that way, opportunities for us can be just endless. And so, investing in pre-K, investing in education, to me, is just a small piece of doing that. Well, kids of color are being challenged. They're not graduating at that rate, at the success rate as our white students. And so to look at housing, how do we stabilize family through housing? And not just looking at that one child who is part of that early education scholarship, but looking at the brothers and sisters that are in that household, looking at the parents in those households and say, what do we do to ensure that, the families are stabilized, that kids have food, So the free lunches was another thing we did,
Huge.
part of education, huge.
Yes.
But also looking at the whole mental illness piece and how do we create those wraparound services so that we are stabilizing not just that one child, but whole families.
Right.
And when we do that, we just create better outcomes for all.
Yeah.
And so.
And I think you hit the nail on the head, because I think there are some who think that the approach to closing the achievement gap is just to go after the teachers, for instance, and not realizing that what goes into a child's ability to learn and readiness to learn is a lot. There's a lot more that goes into it, and you talked about some of those. Obviously, providing affordable and stable housing, employment and jobs, right? Nutrition programs, all of that at the end of the day is important to the stabilization, like you said, not just of that child, but of the whole family. And we really need to, and that's why I'm so appreciative of your voice in the legislature, because you have such a wealth of experience in your life, and not just professional experiences, but also life experiences that I think, there's a lot of legislators who come up there who, not that they're path was any easier, but in a way they don't have the same perspective that you do, and you bring a much needed voice to the legislature of really fighting for people, and I think that's what our party, the DFL party, has always been about, which is fighting for everyone to make sure that all people have access to the same opportunity to succeed in life. And what you're doing on early childhood education is exactly what we need. So thank you for doing that.
It is so important. And I go back to that story about looking around my community and going off to college. And I knew I wanted to be an early elementary ed teacher, right? I knew that was what I wanted to do. But as I got into the studies and got into the whole development, the social-emotional piece of it, the cognitive development, what I began to question was, how can I have the biggest impact as a teacher? And I had this counselor of mine in college who said, if you want to have the greatest impact, and this is like back in the 80s, right? So this is not nothing new.
Right.
Investing in early learning is just, we are all stewards of what happened to us when we was younger, when we were kids. We can look back and can we remember the good times or the bad times. We could try to relive some of those good times, or we could try to, forget some of the bad times. But we are all products of our childhood. But it was that instructor who said to me that if you want to have the biggest impact, then you need to go all the way back to the beginning, Rena. And that's what I did. I decided to go into early education, and really, if we can, look at, we're right now focusing on, I think, maybe 3 to 5, but that 0 to 3 is so important too. And
I want to talk about that for a second, because I heard that most children, by the time they're 3 years old, their minds are already sort of predetermined on how they're going to learn. And so we used to think about education from kindergarten to right now we think about education from 3rd grade to 3 years old to 5 years old. But really, what you're talking about is we need education, birth to the end.
And if we can look at education, for so long we have looked at early education and said from 0 to 5, that's the parent's responsibility.
Right.
That's the parent's job, but education begins, kids are absorbing everything from day one, from your smell, from your comfort, from your feel, from your voice.
Yes.
They are absorbing and learning and growing and developing from the moment they enter this world. Probably some would say even before that, right? But if we can look at our educational system and look at 0 to post-secondary, I think we could just look at creating, kids who opportunities are being transformed to just outcomes that we have not even thought about.
Yeah.
But,
absolutely. How, from your perspective, how will an educated workforce sort of impact Minnesota's economy? Because, we talk about, I think there's Republicans and some of these business leaders who really look at education differently than you and I do. We look at this as improving people's lives and creating opportunity. But I think from their perspective, what I've always said, the great thing about Minnesota is we do have a well-educated workforce, which does help contribute to the economy.
Yeah, so, I'm going to have to respond to that through the lens of a person of color.
Yes.
Right? Because which I am,
Yes.
right? Which is so important because, you know, if we don't have diverse voices at the table, we can only see the world through the lenses that we come with.
Right.
And so having an educated workforce, it looks different for so many people. You know, not everyone will go on to go to college. Some, you know, young people may decide, you know, I just may want to go to a technical college, or I just want to be an auto mechanic.
Right.
I love working on cars, and this is what I want to do. And I think what we have set forth, looking at, you know, eliminating those high-stake testing, that really was not aligned to anything at all. They really had no purpose, besides really, in a huge way, some can say, that really held down the graduation rate for so many people of color.
Right.
You know, trying to pass those tests. When you're going off to college, you know, no institution was looking at that test. They look at the ACT test, they look at the PSATs, they looked at a lot of things, but they did not look at that high-stake testing.
Right.
And so what it did at the end of the day, it caused so many kids who were achieving in the classroom not to graduate, just because of that high-test testing that was not aligned to anything. So what we have done over these last 2 years, we looked at how we can create the world's best workforce. And starting like early, starting back in the 3rd grade, when we're taking those tests, we still have those tests that are still in place, but from those tests that kids be taking, it would be a guide to maybe what their potentials are.
Right.
You know, and if kids don't have a vision about what they want to do, our hope is that educators and others will begin to help them see a path for, you know, the possibilities, whether that's to be a teacher or a doctor or a mechanic. And then we, as they get older, we can align those test results with their aspirations of what they want to do.
That's right.
Because we all have strengths. All our kids have strengths, you know, but how do we elevate those strengths? How do we not just look at the academics, but also look at the social-emotional piece of kids? And so now with all the research we have around brain development, we have the ACEs, you know, how trauma impacts learning, that we have to be smarter about what we do and how we look at success and how we give kids the opportunity to be the best that they can be. And it's not all about the teacher. It's not just all about the parent. I say it's about all of us. We all need to be in to play a little part about the outcomes of our kids in our community, in our state. And when we do that, I believe that looking at having a stronger economic state really is about kids graduating, kids having opportunities, looking at kids' strengths, starting early, as we did with early investment for pre-K. Now all we need to do is expand on that. Because we don't have enough scholarships. We have to expand on the access to those scholarships. And in the midst of that, looking at the whole parent aware and having quality care, we also need to look at how we can create avenues where those community of color providers can take the time out to do a training, to pay for a training, and to be able to continue to do the things they do for our earliest learner. So I'm excited about the possibility. I am even more excited about the work that the DFL has done over these last 2 years with their investment in early childhood education. Research tells us that's the place to go. And I say, as my mother used to say, you put your money where your mouth is.
That's right, exactly.
And we've done that.
I think you know this. 40 years ago, in 1970, the Republicans and Democrats came together and created this thing called the Minnesota Miracle, and it was the idea that we would, to make Minnesota more than just a cold Omaha, we needed to make education the cornerstone of what made our state great. And so for so many years, Republicans and Democrats kept that promise, the idea that the way we create opportunities for all of our children in the state and way we create opportunities for the state to grow and prosper is making education a first priority. But the last 10 years, actually, before Democrats took over, Republicans continued to disinvest in education. So they walked away from their promise that they made many years ago. And thankfully, we came back into power.
Yes.
With your leadership and others, we've actually been able to start turning the corner again and making investments in our children's lives. And that's going to have a huge impact for many, many years to come. Yeah. So you, I know you're going to be out there campaigning hard this summer and fall for candidates throughout the state, and we really appreciate that help. What are you looking forward to coming back into the majority next year? What are you looking forward to accomplishing?
And I'm definitely looking forward to coming back in the majority. The work we have begun needs to continue.
Yes.
And that investment in education and what we did is fantastic. It's great work, but we can't turn back. Mm-hmm. So we need to come back in the majority to continue that great work. And I can hear my voice. I'm getting over a cold, so I can hear that hoarseness coming back.
Yeah.
But going forward, I look forward in education, more scholarships, for one. I really look at, and I'm going to get some pushback from communities of color on this, so on more parent-aware rated daycare providers. And I say this. I say this because if we believe that early education is important, and that if kids have quality learning that enable them to enter kindergarten ready and prepared to be reading by third grade, because everything's about that third grade, we're going to either build prisons or we're going to build more schools and invest in more schools. And I say we need to invest in more school. If we know this and we know the importance of kids reading by third grade and how that impacts later learning, then I think quality care is important for all of us, for every community of color. We just have to find a way that we create access to that, where we eliminate the barriers to providers and parents having the information they need. I truly am one who believe that parents are the first teacher of their kids, but not all parents are prepared to be that first teacher.
Sure.
So we also have to find ways that we are engaging parents in this process in a way that allows them to be successful as mothers, but also as the first teacher of their kids, but also just be ready to and prepared to do more investment in education. Yes. And let's roll it back to zero.
Yeah, I'd like to, right? Wouldn't that be good?
3 and just begin to value that. And, you know, as we did, Representative Paul Marquardt, you know, just did an awesome job of just allowing the focus of education and finance be around evidence-based and research-based data. Yeah. So everything we did was research-based and evidence-based. And science tells us, too, that the brain development of our children and those neurons and being able to just grow and develop and spread and just take in all that the world has to give us, if they're nurtured in the right way, just create better outcomes in later life. We have to start early.
We do.
And we just must continue the investment of wraparound services for families. Yeah. It just creates a strong family, a strong community, and a strong state. And I know we all want that.
Well, and I think even Republicans want that, although I think there are some Republicans who believe in dismantling government, and that's their role there. But I think there are people, majority of Minnesotans, who believe that government does have a role in people's lives, and there's none more clear than what they've been doing on education and trying to tackle some of these issues. And you know, as we look to the next session, obviously you're in leadership in the House now, and as a chair of this committee coming forward, you're going to be playing just an integral role in making sure that all of our learners, all of our children in this state are receiving the same opportunities, and that we continue to meet that promise we made many years ago to all Minnesotans. And so I just can't say thank you enough. I've known you for some years now, and I've always been impressed by your passion and dedication to public service. It's been really something to watch. You've been a great, great leader, and we can't say thank you enough. And good luck on the campaign. I know you're in a good district, but we never take anything for granted, so we need people to get out and vote for you.
Let's not, because District 65A can impact the elections in huge ways
That's
for
right.
our governor, for Al Franken, for other Republicans to come back strong so
Yeah.
we can continue to lead as we have been leading. And so for me, it's just really important that I have a district that's a voting district. So I by no means take anything for granted because it's really important to me that people know the value of having their voices heard through their vote.
Yep.
And so I'm ready to go.
All right.
Ready to go.
Good. Me too.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, I appreciate you being here, Representative, and thank you for all your leadership. That's great. I want to thank Representative Moran for joining me again today to talk about the DFL's investment in early childhood education. For 70 years, the DFL has worked to improve people's lives and to create opportunity for all. And investing in our youngest learners and ensuring they get a good start to their education is another example of that commitment. As always, I appreciate your support of the DFL party. And if you are interested in volunteering for candidates like Rena, who will invest in early childhood education, please visit www.dfl.org. Working with our DFL leaders, we will build a better Minnesota.